Welcome. You're listening to This Leader, the podcast. If you lead people and are seeking the transformational, high-impact secrets that will lead to greater joy and fulfillment in your work, will optimize your team performance, and will help you create a happy, highly productive workplace, then you are this leader and you're in the right place. I'm your host, Claire Laughlin, and each week my guests and I will explore the mindsets, techniques, and actionable strategies that will help you build the career, team, and organization of your dreams. Because I believe no one should have to suffer in a dysfunctional workplace. Let's get started. Have you ever been in the middle of a heated argument with someone you care about? Like your child refusing to get their shoes on, or a colleague pushing back on your feedback, or your partner shutting down during a difficult conversation. And suddenly you realize that you're not actually trying to solve the problem anymore. You're just trying to win. Your heart is racing, your voice is getting louder, and somewhere in the back of your mind, you know you're making things worse, but you can't seem to stop yourself. I know I've been there. We all have. And what's fascinating is that in those moments, we're not actually responding to what's happening right now. We're caught in what my guest today calls an emotional hook. We're enmeshed in a power struggle that has nothing to do with the shoes or the feedback, and everything to do with fear and anger and our deepest needs to feel heard and respected. My guest today has spent years studying these moments, not as a therapist, but as a parent coach who discovered something profound through her own life experiences. You're going to meet Allison Livingston, a dear friend of mine, who specializes in helping high-achieving parents stay connected to their strong-willed children without losing themselves in endless power struggles. For over a decade, she's been helping parents navigate the exact scenarios I just described. But Allison's work transcends parenting. The emotional hooks that we'll discuss and that trap us with our kids are the same ones controlling our workplace conflicts and our partnerships and even our relationship with ourselves at times. What I love about Allison is how she brings both deep compassion and very practical wisdom to the messiest parts of human relationships. She's not just teaching parenting techniques. She'll share universal principles about emotional freedom that apply whether you're dealing with a defiant 5-year-old or a stonewalling team member. Today, we're going to explore how to recognize when you're emotionally hooked and why high achievers are especially vulnerable to these patterns, and most importantly, how to stay connected to others without letting emotional hijacking get in the way. So let's dive in. Here's my conversation with Allison Livingston. Well, hello, Allison. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Claire. Thank you so much. So great to be here.
I'm excited for our conversation. So we're going to jump right in, and I'm going to say right off the bat that I will end up calling you Allie. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay, very good. Because I think the listeners already know that we're good friends. So here we go. Allie, I've been following along with your work for a long time, and you are a parent coach, and you specifically work with high-achieving parents and how to help them be very present and connected with their strong-willed kids. And for all of our listeners, we will get to the part where we start talking about this in the workplace, but start with your methodology, because you talk a lot about this kind of dynamic between parents and children where parents get emotionally hooked into a dynamic and sort of an unhealthy conflict dynamic. And you even call it kind of getting enmeshed with their kids. Can you tell us a little bit about that? I want to just explore that. What does that look like? What does it feel like? Let's start there.
Yeah, it's such an important, in fact, I tell all the parents that come to me, and I've worked with hundreds, that I work with one moment in their life over and over and over when they get so frustrated because they're juggling so many balls and they make a request of their child and the child says, no.
Yeah.
Or they won't put on their shoes, or you're late and you're trying to get out the door and you're trying to be all zen, all calm. You're really trying to get them to do it in a kind way. You love your child. Of course you do.
Right.
And the moment that I deal with over and over is when there's a conflict, there's a power struggle. The child refuses what you ask. And that is so triggering for a parent because they need you, the child, to help, to go along with, go with the flow. And especially if these high achieving parents, like I was, I just expected to be good at parenting. I expected to ask them something and then they just did it. And that's why it was so frustrating when they didn't.
Yeah.
That's the moment. And I would get hot. My fists would clench and my jaw would get tight and I would be like, yes, you will. And I would get more angry and then they would get more resistant. And that's the moment that we're here to talk about, how to do that better, because we don't want to get in fights with our children. We want to love them. We want to play with them. And so I work with how to make it easier, how to be less frustrated, and how to really connect with your kids over the hard parts of life.
Right. And so I will have to say, as a parent myself, and so many of our listeners, I'm sure, are parents, right? These moments happen for all parents. So what was it for you? What was your journey? Give us your journey in a nutshell. Why did this become a life passion for you?
That's a great question. I was miserable. I had my first child and I thought it was going to be bliss. I was like, I'm so competent, I can do this. And then she came out with all these emotions. And my whole childhood was about repressing emotions. My dad was an engineer. My mom's a librarian. They're both German. And they were just like fully, let's just not do emotions. That's messy. It's uncomfortable. Just no, no, no. And so I grew up with a lot of habits of when things got tense or uncomfortable or they were disapproving of me, I would just shut it all down. So that was my way of coping. And then my child comes out. She's a spirited, strong willed, disobedient, some people would say. She was fiery and her temperament, that's just how her temperament is. And so we were getting into so many hooked moments and it was intense, awful. And so I went out and got tools and learned nonviolent communication and internal family systems and all these modalities so that I liked my child again.
Yeah.
So that we could get along, so that we could learn, she knew how to do emotions. I was the one that needed to learn so that we could not have it derail us over and over again, which is so frustrating. I felt so powerless, so helpless, and just stuck.
Right. It's funny because you say that, and I'm just going to reflect back something that you said there. Like, you knew that you needed to go learn emotions. Fascinating, Allie, because I feel like so many people would say, I learned that my child needed to stop doing emotions, right? Like that would be very reasonable.
I started there too.
I feel like that's such a gut thing for people to say, you outside of me, you are the problem. And I need you to change what you're doing so that I feel better.
And every parent that comes to me wants that. Can you fix my child? They're being disobedient. They're not cooperating. They're not listening. That's pretty much every parent that comes. And so I sort of teach them that yes, and you modeling that is what's going to transform the whole family dynamic.
Right.
Because if the parent doesn't do their work, they're going to keep triggering the child who's going to trigger them. And you stay stuck in this really uncomfortable, entangled situation.
Right. Okay. So you get basically emotionally hijacked. And if you're not doing your own work with that, these are my words, but I feel like you're putting all the power and the ability to change, you're shoving it outside of yourself. And you're saying, my ability to enjoy this is going to depend on you changing something. And I feel like that is such a giveaway of our own personal power.
Exactly. And that's why this work that I do with parents is so empowering. I keep sharing that with them. They come to me feeling stuck and powerless and frustrated. And it takes them doing their own work so that then they can enjoy it so much more. And it's really this idea that we need to learn about our own emotions, which none of our parents knew how to teach us. It wasn't a thing when I was growing up. It was just behave or you get punished. Or they'd, flash a candy in front of me, behave and you get this. So that was what I learned and grew up. And so the emotional intelligence never got taught to me. And so I had to relearn that. And that's really what I teach parents is how to understand when they're even triggered. Because most of us just keep talking from that place of emotional hijack. And the cortisol's running through our system and we're in our survival brain and we just have no real connection ability because we're taken over by our limbic system.
Right.
And that's not fun.
Right. It's physiological. We all experience it at different times. But you take the parent in this situation right to that moment and you help them what? What happens there in that moment?
I have a brain model and I get it out and I show them biologically what's happening in a visual way so that then they can understand. Because when we're in our heads or we're in our limbic system, we're just flooded and we don't have much capacity for choice, for being creative, for being able to get ourselves out of this stuck place. And so I help them slow down, soothe their nervous system, recognize in their body what is happening. The first step in the 5 steps to connect is to meet themselves where they are, meet their child where they are. Just acknowledge we are dysregulated, whatever you want to call it. We're hooked, we're triggered, we're a mess. So if we can acknowledge that, and then that already just naming it helps soothe it and helps us get out of that place where we are hijacked by the survival system. So that's the first step.
With words, you say, wow, okay, this is out of control or something.
Yeah, we need to interrupt our patterns of just blustering on from this place of heightened, cortisol, adrenaline, where we're trying to overpower the problem instead of relate with someone and be able to see that that child is struggling.
Right.
The more angry they are, the more defiant they are, they're actually a hurting puppy. They feel like a wolf to your nervous system. So it's just give yourself a clue. I'm triggered. And then you can maybe take those deep breaths. You can take a break. You're interrupting the habit of just forcing your will onto another.
Right. It's so good. I just have to say that again. It's so powerful to help people understand that stimulus is out there in the world. It's everywhere. But the point of power is body connection, right? It's I'm connected to how I'm feeling. At least I can understand that I'm hooked and I'm dysregulated and I'm having a big reaction to something. So that moment, you show them with a brain model. You get them to feel their body, you get them to breathe. What do you do in that moment to interrupt that cycle?
We just slow it all down.
Yeah.
And then the second step in the 5 steps to connect, which after you meet it and you help them recognize what's happening in their body, they're hot, they're breathing fast, they're clenching, because we all have physical tells.
Yeah.
And when we can get to our physical tells and out of just our head, then we can be in choice again. So first it's interrupt and recognize that, meet that moment. I'm dysregulated. Then we can go to, validate. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay that my child's a mess. It's okay that I'm feeling so angry, steam is coming out of my ears. It's okay. There's an emotion here. Emotions are our compass. They are our friends.
Yes.
This is 180 from what I was taught. I was taught anger is to be avoided and repressed and gotten rid of at all costs. And anger is one of the most powerful emotions we have. It means something needs to change. Something is not okay with me. It's a signal. But unfortunately, we end up either directing it at the child, at our partner, at our coworker unintentionally.
Right.
Just to get it out of us.
Right.
Instead of owning it and working with it, processing it.
Yeah.
Or we repress it and we get it inside our bodies to become re-stimulated later as resentment.
Right. Yes. Or to just sort of add to the next big explosion, right? So yeah, maybe I just sort of shove it away for the moment. So your 5 steps to connect really help these parents deal with these emotions and process the emotions so that it doesn't just become sort of stored up in the tissues for later.
Exactly. And to normalize it, because you're also modeling a more healthy way of interacting that your child will use for the rest of their life.
Right.
If they know how to work with their own anger, work with their own frustration, their own embarrassment, their own shame, their own everything, then they don't feel they have to repress it or stop it or it's bad. All these judgments we put right on top of actually just owning and feeling the emotion, which Jill Bolte Taylor, this amazing PhD researcher who had a stroke and was able to find and measure and study her own brain because her left brain got completely offline for this period of her life.
Yeah.
And all she had was the emotional right brain part.
Wow.
And so the left brain is more logic and judgment and analysis. And instead, she figured out that emotional energy lasts 6 to 90 seconds from this experience she had if you don't re stimulate it with another thought.
How freeing is that?
So that gives parents hope that it's not going to last forever and they can handle this. Stop the story.
Okay, I already can see a part 2 coming in our future, Allie, but I have a quick question for you. Why do you think that high achieving parents are particularly susceptible to these patterns of getting hooked? You talk a lot about being very clear about working with high achieving parents with strong willed kids. So, what is that dynamic about?
It's such a great question. It's because that was my lived experience that
Mm-hmm.
I am a high achieving person. I'm driven. I like to do things well. I like to be successful. I like to accomplish things. And I find that most parents I work with have similar high expectations of themselves and therefore others.
I see.
And so they don't have a lot of practice giving grace to themselves
Right.
or to their children. They just want to make things happen. And that gets in the way of the relating and the emotional connection that is just biologically in us.
Right.
And we try to pretend it's not. And we try to just bluster through and just make things happen and be on time and get the A and get a good job. And that blocks, that puts something in between you and your child, you and your coworker,
Right.
when you just ignore the whole emotional framework. And the emotions teach us about our unmet needs, our values. And so when we break this biologically designed connection, then we aren't living to our full potential.
Oh, wow. Absolutely. Okay, so let's take this to the workplace real quick because I mean, I know you really specialize in this parent child relationship, but honest to goodness, so much of what we know about just human relationships, it starts with parent child relationships. You're the child, you have a parent, something happens there, right? But we carry these patterns with us. And I feel like even though people at work will have different levels of responsibility, right? I can imagine any parent coming back to you and being like, yeah, but I'm responsible for my kid getting to school on time. I'm responsible for. And in the workplace, there's ways that we can talk ourselves out of being responsible or talk ourselves into being responsible for other people's outcomes, right? So just kind of bridge that gap for me. How would you say this same paradigm or approach will show up in a more of a workplace type of environment?
That's a great question. And many of the parents that I work with, pretty much all, are working parents. So this is very relatable to them.
I tell you, oh, this is working for me at work too, right?
The skills, because I'm really skill based. I know parents are the busiest population on earth, especially working parents. And so I teach skills that are very tangible because we need it to be in a concrete amount of time.
Right.
So when you are responsible and in a relationship with someone and there's a power dynamic, when you are responsible for, outcomes at work, that's real, right? So if we can say and just notice, again, meet when there's tension, something goes wrong with a project,
Right.
something goes wrong or misunderstanding between you and a coworker.
Right. Performance isn't there, right? The team or the person isn't performing the way they should be performing. This is a big issue at work. Performance management is huge.
Huge issue. So if we can just stop and say, this is a complex moment, instead of what we normally habitually do, which is, it's your fault.
Right.
Or you start pointing, you, and that puts the person immediately on the defensive. And then you're in the conflict. You're in the old pattern of not even hearing what the other person is saying because you're so licking your own wounds and taking something personally and feeling bad, maybe even going into a shame spiral. It just interrupts the potential you have to problem solve together.
Right.
As soon as we go, your fault.
Right. So I'm noticing a problem in your performance. You're not up to par on this. The project is behind timeline, whatever it is. How, though, does a manager deal with the reality of actually, this project is behind? Your performance is not what it should be. So how do we deal with the reality? Just like a parent would have to deal with the reality is like, school is starting in 10 minutes. and you're not dressed, this kind of thing. Like, how do we combine those two things where you really do feel the necessity to guide another person's behavior without triggering them?
That's a great question. Again, it's using the 5 steps to connect. You meet and speak honestly about what you're seeing, and you get to what's going on underneath. So you say, hey, are the goal of us together? So I'll use a kid example and then I'll shift to work, is to get to school on time. And you are not putting on your shoes or whatever you're not doing. And so then we go to, oh, yesterday you were able to do that. Last week you were able to do that. What's going on today? We get to curiosity, which is the 3rd step in the 5 steps to connect. But often the child isn't ready to hear. Again, if you can come with curiosity, great. Usually the parent or the worker is just you. They have these, again, the habit. So if you can go to, I am unsure what we're going to do. We need to get to school. You don't have your shoes on. What can we do together? And validate, hey, what's going on with you? Has something changed? Is something different? What's going on? What's your unmet need, instead of right to the strategy of, I'm going to tell you how to get this done and you're going to listen or else. Energy is what comes across. And so it's not even the words so much is, what is my energy? Am I collaborative? Am I really out for our mutual best interests? And so at a coworker situation, hey, I've noticed this. I'm curious. I know you want to finish this and have great results too. What's going on? If I can come at it with curiosity, because myself is grounded and I'm not in that your fault, your blame, what's wrong with you, my energy will be totally different. And it's because I've met myself where I am. I've validated my frustration, and I've gotten to this place of curiosity about, what's my story? Is my story your fault, or is my story, he's usually able to do what he needs to do. I wonder what's going on.
Right.
Makes all the difference in my energy towards that person.
Okay. I do have a question about this because I know this comes up so frequently in my work with leaders and teams. It astounds me. But a manager, a leader will come to a person and they'll say, hey, we have this goal, just like you just said, we've got this goal, we've got this project. And the employee comes back with some version of stonewalling, just looks at them like, well, that's not, that might be your goal, but it's not mine, or just stonewalling like, okay, fine, I'll do it, and then doesn't. There's this way that in a parent-child relationship, I can see that there's sort of an inherent relationship built in where even if you have to look pretty deep under the surface, both parties are emotionally connected. And yet in so many workplaces, you get a leader who comes in and for whatever reason, their team has decided before they ever walked in the door, or somebody on their team has decided, you're the enemy. I don't have to listen to you. I know this job better than you do. Whatever that is. So do the tools still work?
A great question. And you bring up the 5th step in the 5 steps to connect, which is boundaries. And it always comes to, again, a place of where the rubber meets the road, of you need to have a hard stop. So for a child, yes, they just say, no, I won't. When you have been so calm and rational and you say, if you aren't going to put on your shoes, I'm going to get your shoes and I'm going to pick you up and we're going to go to the car. So it's not saying what the child's going to do. You're not saying what the coworker is going to do. You're saying, what if this continues, this is the goal that needs to happen. This is the manager. This is what I'm going to do.
Right.
If this behavior continues, if this project doesn't get done by Wednesday. And again, the key thing is to do this after having done the steps so that you're in a grounded place of curiosity and collaboration, so that you don't come with all this punitive, your fault, you're terrible energy.
Right.
And so if you can set boundaries from this grounded place after having done the first 4 steps, then it makes all the difference in your interaction with that other human, because you really are on their team.
Right. This is the long view. Is that there needs to be trust built in the relationship. And sometimes at work, we know that you enter in and for whatever reason, there's a person doesn't trust you. Maybe you earned it or maybe you didn't earn it. But for whatever reason, the trust has been broken and it's very difficult to reestablish. I think we skipped step number 4 as well. So I want you to just give us the recap of all 5 steps. And then maybe we can just talk a little bit about how to utilize the first few steps, because they're about your own understanding of yourself in order to kind of build that good foundation. Let's start there. Give me the 5 steps.
The first step is to meet yourself where you are, which is most often, if you have to do the steps, in an emotionally hijacked place. You're pissed, you're frustrated, you're embarrassed, you're whatever, your child's dysregulated. And so you're like, oh my God, I'm in Trader Joe's and what a nightmare. Or at work, I'm so frustrated. This project is not going as it needs to. My boss is going to get on me. What am I going to do?
This person's stonewalling me.
Yeah.
All the elements are there. Okay.
All the elements are there. So I'm feeling, you go to your body sensation to even meet yourself and know where you are. I'm hot. My breathing is shallow. My fists are clenched, my jaw. And this is a step that surprisingly, most people aren't aware of. They're just still in their heads. I myself lived in my head for the first, 30 years of my life. I had no idea. Body, emotions, what the heck? Why do I need those? So the first thing is just to recognize I'm triggered. The second step is to validate. Oh, it makes sense I'm triggered. I have a time deadline.
Right.
I need to get from point A to B, and this person I'm with is not supporting me. So validate, of course I'm triggered. It's okay. What is my unmet need? My unmet need is for partnership. My unmet need is for ease. My unmet need is for contributing to get what I need to done. So it's just go through those processing steps.
1 and 2 already are very much about self-awareness. You must show up from the beginning being self-aware. Okay, what's number 3?
Number 3 is then my story of I'm right. It is your fault. You do need to change. That is get curious about my story. Get curious about why am I so attached to it has to be this way?
Right.
Because parents are thinking they're the leaders of the ship. They're supposed to be in charge. Yes, especially in the first, 10 years of life. And your child has complete agency as a human and wants to contribute, wants to have their ideas known. Your coworker, your person who works for you wants to have their ideas expressed. And so it's being curious about why I'm so attached to my story and being curious about their story. What is going on for them? We're on the same team.
Right. So now I've kind of figured out, okay, this is kind of what's going on for me. I understand my emotional reaction, my emotional state, my story. Now let's get really curious about what could be happening for that other person. And I just recently, just for our listeners, did an episode called Good Reasons about that moment of trying to give generous interpretations of other people's actions to put yourself in a better position.
Assume positive intent. I love that.
Yeah. So to really think about how you can sort of lower your own cortisol, your own emotional reaction by pausing in the moment and thinking, okay, I might not get it, but they certainly arrived here by some of their human needs, their deep motivations. Something logical to them is happening.
Which were different than mine, and their temperament is probably different than mine. So again, it's just a complex moment. How do we get through it together?
Okay.
And I do want to do a footnote of step 2. There's also the emotional release, which we can't always do in the workplace. We can't always do on the way to school. And so it's making time in your life for being able to acknowledge and release the emotional energy so that it doesn't get stuck in your body and come back as, again, resentment and come between you.
Right. Kickboxing, other things like that.
Yes. Nature
Yes.
walking.
Yes.
Dancing to music, whatever.
And with the intention of releasing that in a positive, healthy way, not unleashing it on another.
Exactly. It's all directional. You release it at the sky or the ground, not at another person.
Oh, how beautiful that would be. Okay. So what's the next step?
So we've gotten to be curious about the story, ours and theirs.
Right.
Again, our energy is probably already shifting and we're able to be more grounded and centered and less on the attack mode of you. Then we go to life-saving listening, step 4. So life-saving listening is non-judgmental listening, where you are really creating safe space for that other person to voice their own frustrations, to be able to tell you their side of the story, which may be in a fiery way. And again, your job, don't take it personally, has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
You're just there to create a container for them to be heard, seen, and accepted.
Right.
In a family, this is essential and too often missed because we have our parenting hat on and we think we're supposed to be accomplishing.
Right.
So, this is the relating step of being able to create this safe emotional space for your child to be messy, to be emotive, to be whatever they are and release their own emotional energy.
And this is where the psychological safety on a team really comes into play and doing the work to establish that kind of safety so people can express and have the real conversations about, well, you're asking me to perform in this particular way, but I don't have the support I need. And I've asked you for the support and you've promised the support and you're not bringing it, or something, whatever that is, so that you can have a real conversation about what's under the surface for both parties.
Yeah. And this is really sacred space. And it's not going to be punished. That's one of the parameters of I'm going to listen to whatever feedback you have
Yeah.
and not take it personally. And if I do get triggered again, I'm going to take a break.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to steps 1 through 3 and I'll come back and we're going to reconvene because it's important to realize. And again, this is how we stop, again, the enmeshment or entanglement that I feel because of my life experience. You don't make me feel. And so it's really helping me being me, you being you, and not getting entangled in each other.
Right? Allow the other person to have their needs, their space. Those are separate from you. As much as I love the idea of us all being sort of connected on some grand level, it's very helpful to remember that each person can have their own reactions to things without it meaning something for me. I don't have to own your experience. I don't have to take that on in my heart. I feel like that's another thing that could happen particularly for high achieving people is taking on the responsibility, of other people's experience in life. Like, oh, I'm supposed to make it just right for you, or I'm supposed to be the one that delivers everything that needs to be delivered. Maybe that's a little different.
And it's why I work with families because the nurturing bond is there, built in.
Yes.
It's easier than at a work situation, which I've also been in, or even with two partners, with a couple. I say, use it with your kids first. It's easier. And then use it with each other.
Yes. Okay. 5th step. And we're going to lay this out in the show notes so everybody knows. We'll have all 5 steps there.
The 5th step is then to know that boundaries are part of also being human. We need to set clean, clear boundaries, hopefully from a grounded place. What is okay with me? What is not okay with me? And in a family, the limits around bad behavior or behavior that is not what we enjoy in our family. We don't name call, all those kinds of things. When the teens come, we don't drink. We don't do drugs, all those things. So there's ways to set limits in a way that you can get your children or your coworkers to actually follow because it's built on teamwork, it's built on trust, and it's built on mutuality, and it's built on clarity. I have needs as a human. I call them unarguables. My feelings, my needs, and what's happening in my body, you can't argue with.
As much as you might try.
Your feelings, your needs, your body sensations are what's happening for you. I can't argue with that. We can argue all day long about the strategies to meet the needs.
Right.
So when we can decide, hey, here's the goal, let's brainstorm about the goal that we both have, the needs that we want to meet, and then we'll go to the strategies and we'll brainstorm them together so that we can come to one that works for both of us.
Oh, that's so good. And I feel like boundaries so often they're connected, especially in a family as well, but in a workplace situation to having real clear set of team values, for example, and clear expectations, clear behavioral expectations, which are hard to set. It's not like, they need to be purposefully crafted, I think. Just like you were talking about in a family, our expectations, our family rule set, so to speak, our guidelines for behavior. And those need to be enculturated. They don't just pop up and exist.
Yes. And I just want to say all this is hard because we're all moving so fast. So again, I just want to embrace and empower all the coworkers and the parents out there. It is possible. It can be more enjoyable and you're not alone. Families and workplaces all over the world are experiencing just what you are.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just kind of bring us to a close here. We're just about out of time, but when someone is able to master this process, master it, I know it's a lifelong commitment and journey, right? And it probably never feels finished, but when somebody really build the skills, right? When somebody really is able to build stronger neural pathways and more readily available skill sets around tapping into their emotions, getting curious, evaluating the story, really listening deeply, and then setting good boundaries and a pathway forward, what becomes possible for them? What does the future look like?
The best part, and I still remember the day when my daughter was able to turn around. Had been in this big conflict, and I used the 5 steps, and her shoulders dropped, and she said, "Mom, I see my part in this,"
Wow.
and was able to kind of come towards me. And that was such a huge moment because before she had been so defensive, so on the attack, and I thought the day would never come. And my other daughter, when I was able to, again, use the 5 steps with her when we had been in conflict, her whole face just lit up and she just got this like, oh, my mom's on my team or my boss is on my team.
Right.
He understands me. She understands me. We're not adversarial. And so that's the real key part of all of this. It becomes easier. It is still complex. There are still triggers. There are still moments of not understanding each other.
Yeah.
But when we acknowledge that we're on the same team and use the 5 steps, it is so much more enjoyable and you have ease and harmony and connection.
I love it. So, how can people reach you if they are parents and they're thinking, oh, I need this? Where will they find you?
I have made it so attainable for parents because I was a working parent. So my business is the number 5 stepstoconnect.com. And I have a free coaching call that parents can sign up for. You get one actionable step that they can take today about one of their core conflict issues. And I just want to give them a sense of empowerment. There's hope. It doesn't have to be so hard, and they're not alone.
Love it. Love it. Okay. And we'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here with me. This was really, really interesting. I know there's more that we're going to have to unpack. We'll have you back again soon, but thanks for being here with me.
Thank you. I'm so passionate about this. I don't want anyone to suffer in silence, and the work you do is amazing. So thank you for having me on.
Thank you. So, if you remember back to that situation I described at the beginning, like feeling caught in a power struggle where you're not actually trying to solve the problem anymore, you're just trying to win. Here's what Allison taught us. First, those moments when we get hooked, they aren't character flaws. They're predictable patterns that we can learn to recognize and interrupt. Second, the same drive that makes us successful at work, like our need to meet timelines and achieve outcomes, or our high standards, our difficulty tolerating other people's, differences or inefficiencies, those exact strengths make us vulnerable to emotional enmeshment and entanglement in our own relationships. And third, there's a profound difference between caring deeply about someone or something and getting emotionally hijacked by their behavior or the moment. So whether you're dealing with a strong-willed child who won't cooperate, or a colleague who challenges your ideas in meetings, or a family member who knows exactly which buttons to push, the principles remain. You can stay connected without being controlled. You can maintain your standards without losing your emotional equilibrium. And you can care without getting hooked. I'm so grateful to Allison for sharing not just her methodology, but her own journey from being emotionally enmeshed to finding that sweet spot of staying engaged but detached from the storm with her own daughter. And as she continues helping high achievers break free from exhausting power struggles, her wisdom about emotional hooks, that's definitely something that I carry with me into every difficult conversation. You can learn more about Allison and her 5 Steps to Connect framework at 5stepstoconnect.com. That's the number 5, 5stepstoconnect.com. Here's what I want you to think about. What relationship in your life would transform if you could stay connected without getting hooked? And if this conversation sparked something for you, please try Allison's simple questions the next time you feel that familiar surge of frustration. What am I feeling and experiencing right now? Go to your body. Listen to your body's wisdom. And what story am I telling myself about what's happening, right? Meanwhile, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future conversations about these hidden dynamics that shape our most important relationships and our ability to be successful. Until next time, stay curious about your own emotional hooks. They're showing you exactly where your freedom lies. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about my services and for lots of free resources and additional tools to enrich your journey, visit my website and subscribe to my newsletter at clairelaughlin.com. If you have a question about leadership, teams, or organizational culture you'd like me to address on the podcast, please reach out to me at support@clairelaughlin.com and connect with me on social channels at Claire Laughlin Consulting. Until next time, lead the way.